You ever spend your whole life being compared to someone who's not even in the room? Hi, I'm Claire Whitmore. I'm 31, born and raised in Maple Glen, Oregon, a town so small the bakery doubles as a post office, and your high school ex probably bags your groceries. I'm a licensed CPA, have my own firm now, and I'm proud to say I built every piece of it with my own two hands, without needing to ride the coattails of a family name. But back then, back when I was just Claire, I was Ava's sister. That was the whole identity package. Just Ava's sister, the soft-spoken girl in the shadow of a local legend. Ava Whitmore wasn't just my older sister. She was the golden girl of Maple Glen. Star violinist. Debate champion. Interned in D.C. before she even graduated college. My parents talked about her like she hung the stars herself. I'm not being dramatic. There's literally a framed Time magazine in our living room with her face on it. Local feature, sure, but still. I didn't even get a photo on the fridge unless it was by accident. I remember once in high school, I brought home an award, a counting bowl, first place. My dad looked at it like it was a participation trophy. That's great, Claire. You're so consistent. Consistent. That was his favorite word for me. Not brilliant, not driven, not even creative. Just steady Claire, the reliable one. Like a toaster oven that never breaks. At family dinners, Ava would sweep in late in heels and lipstick, talking about federal policy and social innovation like she was briefing a cabinet. My mom would beam. My dad would pour her a glass of that Pinot they kept just for her visits. And me, I passed the mashed potatoes. I didn't resent her, not at first. I mean, it's hard to resent someone who seems to genuinely have it all together. She wasn't mean, not outwardly. She'd ruffle my hair, call me kiddo, and sometimes even tell me she was proud. But it always felt like she was talking down from a balcony I could never climb to. Still, I worked hard. Went to college in Portland, got my CPA, and started small tax prep for local clients' books for mom and pop shops. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And when Dad's construction business started showing signs of financial trouble, guess who they called? Not Ava, but the weirdest part. Even as I was quietly saving the company behind the scenes, filing back taxes, negotiating with creditors, pulling them out of a hole, Ava never even looked down into. They still talked about her like she was the only one who could have done it right. She just has that spark, my mom once told me when I suggested they sell one of their unused lots to cover payroll. Ava would have found a way without selling anything. Cool. Next time I'll just pray to the gods of divine problem solving, huh? I swallowed it for years. The comparisons, the invisibility, the constant pat on the head, and reminder that no matter what I did, I was just less. Because Ava existed, I didn't shine. I reflected. But all that changed the year she blew up everything. It didn't happen slowly. It was a nuclear detonation in heels. And I wasn't just left picking up the pieces, I was standing in the fallout, scorched and blinking. And for once everyone had to look at me, because the golden girl didn't just fall. She threw herself off the pedestal and tried to take the whole damn family down with her. It started with a phone call. I was balancing a client's payroll spreadsheet in one tab and a very questionable DoorDash order in the other, when my phone buzzed with Mom's contact photo cropped from one of those posed Christmas cards where we all pretended to like each other. I expected the usual, a passive-aggressive reminder to visit more often, or a subtle dig at my workaholic lifestyle. But her voice was shaky. Not melodramatic. Ava-style shaky, real shaky. Claire, it's your sister. She's done something. You need to come over. I thought maybe Ava had eloped with some politician or gotten caught in a scandal with a lobbyist. Not that it would have been a surprise. Ava always lived in some high-stakes Netflix original drama, while the rest of us just tried to pay our mortgages on time. But when I pulled into the driveway and saw Dad sitting on the front porch, his face hollowed out like a carved pumpkin, I knew it was worse. Inside on the dining table, once Ava's stage, was a thick manila envelope. Contracts, statements, memos. And the center of it all, a signed authorization from our father supposedly handing over controlling interest in Whitmore Contracting to Ava. Except he never signed it. Her signature, yes, his forged. I looked at the notary stamp and laughed out loud. She used Brenda the notary from the coffee shop. Brenda once notarized a dog adoption form for me and spelled my last name Whitemore. Real airtight legal work. Dad didn't laugh. He just said, I didn't think she'd do this. Not to me. Turns out while we were busy glorifying Ava's national achievements, she'd been pulling strings back home, siphoning money using shell LLCs, even refinancing the office property under a fake holding company. All to fund her vision project, a nonprofit/think tank/vanity project in LA. She was bleeding the company dry, and my parents too dazzled to notice. When I confronted Mom, gentle voice trying to piece it all together, she defended her. Ava wouldn't do that. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Ava forged Dad's signature, Mom. She restructured the debt to go into your name and funneled money into a nonprofit that doesn't even exist. My mother looked like I'd slapped her. Not because she didn't believe me, but because believing me meant accepting that their perfect daughter wasn't perfect. And worse, it meant I'd been right all along. I'll never forget the moment it broke. She said you'd twist it. Mom whispered, eyes glossy. She said you'd try to turn us against her, that you were always jealous. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because that was the moment I realized Ava hadn't just stolen money, she'd prepped the whole story. Planted the seeds, poisoned the well, and they drank it. I walked out, not with a dramatic slam or a final mic drop, just quiet, stunned. But then the real twist came. A week later, Ava left. Not just the business, not just Maple Glen. She ghosted the whole family, cut off Mom and Dad, blocked them, froze the account she set up, left her apartment in D.C. without a trace. The woman who'd always needed the spotlight vanished like a magician's final act. The fallout was brutal. Vendors pulled contracts. Workers weren't paid. The IRS started sniffing around. And the Whitmores, the ones who built their lives around the myth of Ava, were left clinging to the wreckage of their name. And me. I was the only one left with a calculator, a pulse, and a grudge. Funny how the daughter you forgot about turns out to be the only one who can save your legacy. I didn't save them out of love. Let's get that out of the way. I wasn't doing it for redemption or approval. Those were currencies I'd run out of years ago. I did it because I couldn't stand watching the whole house of cards collapse when I knew exactly how to glue it back together, well, glue and duct tape. And maybe a crowbar. After Ava vanished, Dad didn't get out of bed for 3 days. Mom shuffled around like someone had unplugged her from the wall. The Whitmore name, once a local badge of pride, was now whispered with pity. I could hear it in the grocery store. Poor Frank and Darlene. Their daughter ran off, left them broke. They never said which daughter. So I stepped in. Not for them, for me. First stop, damage control. I spent nights combing through Whitmore Contracting's financials. There were entire Excel sheets that looked like they'd been designed by a caffeinated raccoon. Loans restructured in names that didn't legally exist. Vendor accounts overdue by months. If this had gone on another quarter, Dad could have been facing criminal charges, not just debt. I rebuilt payroll, manually renegotiated with our concrete supplier, even sweet-talked the union rep with a box of donuts and the last shred of patience I had. Meanwhile, I hired a forensic accountant, out of my own pocket, to figure out just how deep Ava's fraud went. And guess what? She'd taken out a second mortgage on the company's headquarters, using Mom's name. Mom, who still thinks Wi-Fi is a kind of pasta. When I showed her the paperwork, she sat silently for a full minute, blinking. Then she whispered, "Why would she do this?" It was the first time I saw my mother truly cry over Ava. Not out of pride, but betrayal. She said she was protecting us, Mom mumbled. She said she had to act quickly, that you wouldn't understand the vision. I shook my head. She didn't have a vision. She had an exit strategy, and that was the part they didn't get. Ava wasn't careless. She was precise. Everything she did was calculated: the forged documents, the sudden departure, the media silence. She'd played the long game, gained their trust, used my absence to paint herself as the only solution, and when it was time, yanked the ladder away and lit it on fire. But here's where things got messy. 3 months into the rebuild, I got a letter. Not an email, not a voicemail. An actual typed letter with my name printed neatly across the front. The return address, a co-working space in San Diego. Inside was a single page. Claire, I know you're angry. I know you think you're fixing something, but you're only delaying the inevitable. This family doesn't need a savior. It needs a reset. And you were never meant to lead. There was no signature. Just a watermark, the Ava Whitmore Foundation. She hadn't disappeared. She'd repositioned. Her nonprofit wasn't gone. It was rebranded. And apparently it now had a mission statement that included erasing her family. I crumpled the letter and stared out my office window. She wanted me to stop. She wanted me to believe that I couldn't win, that I'd always be second best even in survival. Well, guess what? I've always been a slow burn. But when I ignite, I don't flicker. If Ava wanted a reset, she was about to learn that erasing me came with consequences, because I wasn't the sister in the shadows anymore, and I was just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a half-full mug of coffee, and that stupid letter now flattened and smoothed out under a paperweight like a crime scene photo. I read it again, and again, and again. You were never meant to lead. That line looped in my head like a broken elevator ding. I could almost hear her saying it too. Ava's voice calm and precise like a CEO delivering a quarterly report. God, even her cruelty came in bullet points. By sunrise, I had a plan. No more patchwork. No more soft-spoken damage control. I was done mopping the floor. It was time to flip the damn table. Step 1, reclaim the business, officially. Legally, the company still had my father's name on the registry, but with Ava's little document ballet, there was ambiguity, a tangled mess of ownership, power of attorney loopholes, and ghost corporations. The kind of mess that lets people like her slip in, strip the copper and leave you with the rusted shell. I filed a motion to freeze all assets tied to Whitmore Contracting and its affiliates, including the Ava Whitmore Foundation. It was a long shot. But the minute her name popped up in connection to anything involving fraud, the court didn't blink. She got served 2 days later. My phone rang that night. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but my curiosity had a very specific ringtone. Claire, came the voice. It wasn't angry. It wasn't apologetic. It was amused. Well, she continued, I knew you'd eventually grow a spine. Took you long enough. I leaned back, let the silence settle like ash. Then I said, you stole from our parents. You committed bank fraud. You used our name to scam donors for a vanity project. And you're mad I fought back. I'm not mad, she said coolly. I'm impressed. But don't fool yourself. You're not winning. You're just reacting. I grinned. Keep watching. You'll be reacting to me soon. And then I hung up. That phone call changed everything. It lit something in me. Something feral. Something sharp. I started digging not just into the business, but into her foundation, her donors, her board. One late night with my laptop glowing and my patience wearing thin, I founded a contract between her foundation and a local tech firm. The payment over $600,000. The work vague consulting. I called the firm, posed as an interested client, asked what Ava's team helped them with. Their reply, we never worked with anyone named Ava Whitmore. Gotcha. I built a dossier, emailed the IRS, sent certified letters to major donors. Ava had built a sandcastle empire, and I was pulling away buckets of water one by one. But while I was doing all that, the emotional fallout back home was spreading. My parents, they were unraveling. Dad spent most days sitting in the garage staring at old blueprints like they were treasure maps to a time when his daughter hadn't betrayed him. Mom went to church twice a day and refused to say Ava's name. When I came home with a new win, an injunction, a revoked business license, a frozen asset, there was no celebration. Just hollow nods. And occasionally I still don't understand why she did it. I didn't either. But I was learning that why didn't always matter. Some people didn't need reasons, they needed control. Ava didn't just want to win. She wanted to be the only one standing, and I was now in her way. Then came the email. Subject, let's end this. Like adults. It was from Ava. Not a burner. Her real email. Attached was a calendar invite, neutral ground, a cafe in Portland. Public. Safe. Probably bugged. I accepted. When I showed up, she was already seated. Aviator's designer coat, that annoying smugness that never left her face. "You look tired," she said, smirking. "You look like someone trying too hard not to flinch," I replied, sitting down. She gave a little laugh. "Claire, what's the end game here? You want to ruin me?" I stirred my tea slowly. "No, I want to replace you." Her smile faltered. "Just for a second. You think you can carry the weight of this name? I already am." She leaned in. "You don't get it. I didn't leave because I failed. I left because I evolved. This family was dead weight. And you were the only one strong enough to lift it." I cut in. She blinked. "I don't need your validation, Ava. I don't even need your forgiveness. But if you ever come near this business again, if you touch Mom and Dad's assets or try to rewrite the truth, I will bury you in paperwork until your foundation is a cautionary tale in a TED Talk." For the first time, she looked nervous. She stood up, brushing imaginary lint off her lapel. "You've changed." I smiled. Finally. When Ava walked out of that cafe, I didn't follow. That was the last time we saw each other face to face, not because I feared her, but because I didn't have to anymore. She wasn't some untouchable icon now. She was a rival. And for once, the scoreboard wasn't skewed in her favor. But don't think for a second the fight ended there. No, Ava didn't back down. She pivoted. Within a week, I started getting anonymous calls. Concerned business leaders questioning my qualifications. A surprise audit from the state licensing board. A hit piece in a local blog accusing me of weaponizing family drama for professional gain. Cute. She thought she could smear me into submission. She underestimated two things. One, I had receipts. Literal receipts. And two, I didn't care if people liked me anymore. Ava was fighting with press releases and whispers. I was fighting with court documents, hard facts, and allies she didn't know I had. See, while she was jet-setting and charming her way through donor galas, I had been here. In this town. Helping local businesses survive pandemic years. Giving free tax clinics. I'd built goodwill like insulation, quiet, sturdy, and suddenly invaluable. When the board met to vote on revoking her foundation's 501c3 status, I sent over a packet. Detailed. Cited. Highlighted. Within 2 weeks, they froze her public donations. That same month, I helped finalize the restructuring of Whitmore Contracting. We dropped the name. It hurt, I won't lie. But I'd learned that legacy is only worth what you do with it, not what you inherit. We rebranded as Maple Ridge Development, a nod to our home, not to the people who used it as a stage. But Ava wasn't done. She still had a card to play. She filed a civil suit. Claimed defamation. Loss of opportunity. Emotional distress. The irony made me laugh so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. It was a mess, legal, emotional, strategic. But I was ready. And this time I had backup. Dad testified on my behalf. Quietly, nervously. But he did. He admitted Ava had manipulated him, forged his name, exploited his trust. It broke something in him to say it. But it also healed something too. Mom didn't testify, but she came to court, sat behind me, clutched my hand like a lifeline. Ava showed up in all black, strategic, somber, like a widow at her own funeral. Her lawyer was sharp, but facts are facts. Documents don't lie. And when we presented the proof, every transfer, every forged signature, every shell company, it wasn't about drama. It was about truth. The ruling. Case dismissed. Counterclaims for damages allowed to proceed. Ava didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared at me like she didn't recognize me. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Game, set, Claire. That night I drove home through Maple Glen's winding roads. The sky was pink with leftover sunset. I stopped by the lot where the original Whitmore office once stood. It was empty now, flattened, sold-off memories scraped down to gravel. I stepped out of the car and stood there in the cooling air. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was something better. Free. Free from her shadow. Free from the need to prove myself. Free from the idea that power only belongs to the loudest voice in the room. Because the truth is quiet doesn't mean weak, and underestimated doesn't mean irrelevant. It just means you get to surprise them when you rise. The storm passed, but its echoes lingered. Even after the lawsuits ended and the papers were signed, there were still reminders of everything Ava and I had burned through bits of ash in the wind. Clients asked hesitant questions. Friends offered awkward congratulations that came out more like condolences. And my parents, well, we were trying. Dad started working part-time at Maple Ridge again. He kept his head down, his sleeves rolled up, and never once mentioned the name Ava. Not once. He called me boss with a crooked smile that almost made me cry the first time. Almost. Mom baked more than ever. Cookies, muffins, a pie for the new site launch, even though nobody eats pie at 9 a.m. On a job site we all did anyway. Sometimes I caught her staring at me across the dinner table like she was searching for Ava in my face and coming up empty. That used to hurt. Now it just felt like her way of mourning someone who never really existed the way she thought. I gave them space. I didn't demand apologies. I wasn't interested in gloating. Not because I was being noble, but because I realized something far more satisfying had happened. I'd become the version of myself that didn't need their approval to feel whole. And yet, Ava wasn't done. She never is. A few months later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a glossy magazine. Fortune Women to Watch. And right there in the bottom left corner was her. Ava Whitmore, rebuilding after betrayal. I flipped through the spread. It was masterfully done, spun like gold. Her foundation had survived false accusations, she'd narrowly escaped financial sabotage, and now she was using her pain to empower women in business. I laughed so loud I startled my cat. She was rewriting the narrative. Trying to erase the court records with clever PR replaced truth with story. And for a moment, just a moment, I considered responding. Writing an op-ed. Launching a counter-campaign. But I didn't. Instead, I took a different route. A local university reached out asking if I'd be willing to give a guest lecture on ethics in family businesses. I said yes. And I told the story, not the scandal, not the gossip, the lessons. How trust without oversight can be dangerous. How legacy can be a trap. How quiet strength matters just as much as charisma. Afterward, a girl no older than 20 came up to me and said, "My older sister's like that. Everyone worships her." I thought maybe I was just being petty. "You're not petty," I told her. "You're just living in someone's spotlight. But it's not your job to stay there." That conversation stuck with me, so I kept telling my story not to tear Ava down but to build something new from what she left behind. I started mentoring young women in the trades. Partnered with a nonprofit to build affordable housing for single mothers. Even hosted a podcast episode called Second Daughters First Victories. Petty maybe. Effective absolutely. But the real shift happened the day Ava emailed me again. This time it was short. "Claire, I read your interview. You're better at this than I thought. Just don't forget who taught you to fight." No threats, no condescension. Just acknowledgement. And for once I didn't feel the need to respond, because the fight wasn't mine anymore. I'd already won. The win was quiet. No confetti. No dramatic applause. Just a steady sense of peace where the ache used to live. Life moved on like it always does. And slowly so did I. Maple Ridge development was thriving. We'd expanded into 3 counties, picked up a few green projects, and became the kind of company I always dreamed of building, honest, humble-rooted in the community. I even hired a few interns straight out of local high schools. One of them, Haley, reminded me of me at 17, sharp, quiet, underestimated. "Are you sure I can handle this?" she asked on her second week, hands trembling over a contractor's estimate. "You don't have to be loud to be strong," I told her. "You just have to know where to stand." She smiled at that. And something in me, something buried deep since my own teen years, finally exhaled. Mom and I had started gardening together. I know sounds corny, but there's something healing about digging your fingers into dirt, letting silence do the talking. One morning while we were planting snapdragons, she said, "I didn't see you." For a long time, Claire, I didn't say anything, just pressed another bulb into the soil. I wanted to believe Ava was special, because that made us feel special too. But you were right in front of me. Quiet and steady and good. I looked up. She was crying, hands covered in dirt. I wiped my cheek with the back of my wrist and whispered, "It's okay, Mom." Because it was. It really was. The funny thing about revenge, it never really satisfies. Not in the long run. But just as truth. Those sit with you like warm tea on a cold morning. They don't rush. They just settle in. And yet there was one more thread left to pull. Ava's comeback was starting to unravel again. A few whistleblowers had gone public about misuse of funds in her newest foundation, this time in Miami. Same playbook, different coast. A reporter called me for comment. "We understand there was a previous conflict. Do you feel vindicated?" I could have said yes. I could have savored it. But instead, I said I feel relieved. For everyone who's finally seeing what I saw years ago. I just hope this time someone steps in before more people get hurt. I meant it. I didn't need to see Ava fall anymore, but I did need to rise. Later that night I got a voicemail. No name, but I knew the voice. "You're good, Claire. Better than I ever thought. Maybe even better than me." A pause. "Take care of them." And then click. I saved the message. Not out of sentiment, but because it felt like the final page in a book I'd been reading for decades. The next day I changed the contact in my phone from Ava to just a blank number. No name, no photo, just silence. Because I didn't need the story to go on. I had my ending, and my beginning. I used to believe stories like this had clear endings, that there would be a day where I'd stand on some proverbial mountaintop, hands on hips, wind in my hair, credits rolling behind me. But life doesn't work like that. Endings don't come with trumpets. They come with peace, with space, with the stillness that follows the last page being turned. The truth is, I no longer need to talk about Ava. She's not the main character anymore. I am. Today, Maple Ridge Development is something I'm deeply proud of. Not just because of the revenue or the awards, though. Hey, we did get a small business spotlight in the State Journal last month, but because of what we represent. We're a second chance for our family's name, for our employees, for me. I've taken on speaking engagements about women in leadership, the pitfalls of family-run businesses, and how to spot charismatic manipulation dressed up as ambition. It turns out when you tell the truth calmly, clearly, and with a little humor, people listen. At one Q&A session, a young woman asked me, "If you could go back, what would you tell your younger self?" I paused for a moment and smiled. That your voice isn't too quiet, it's just too true for the wrong rooms. But that changes. And when it does, your voice will move mountains. She wrote it down like it was gold, and maybe for her it was. Mom and Dad are still, well, complicated. They love me, I know that now. But they're still grieving the daughter they thought they had. Grief's strange that way. It doesn't care if the person is still alive. It just clings to the idea of who someone used to be. But I don't carry their pain for them anymore. I let it sit beside mine quietly. Sometimes Mom brings up Ava in passing. A recipe she liked. A story from college. And I nod. I don't change the subject. I don't wince. I just let it pass through the room like a breeze. Harmless. Already gone. As for Ava, I haven't heard from her in nearly a year. No emails, no letters, just silence. Maybe she's planning another reinvention. Maybe she's truly disappeared. Or maybe she's finally tired of the war she started. I hope so. I don't hate her. I never did. But I'll never let her rewrite the story again. Because this story, the one you've just listened to, is mine now. Written not in anger or bitterness, but in clarity. I was never the loudest, never the flashiest. But I showed up. I rebuilt. I fought when I had to, and I stood tall when everyone expected me to fold. And in doing so, I learned something she never did. That real power doesn't come from outshining others. It comes from refusing to be dimmed. So if you're listening to this, and you've been the other sibling, the overlooked one, the quiet one, let me tell you something. You are not invisible. You are not behind. You are not less. You are just waiting for the right moment to take up space. And when you do, don't apologize. Don't shrink. Stand tall. Because shadows can't exist without light. And you, my friend, you've been the light all along.